The story kicks off in the dead of night, right outside your average convenience store. To his smartphone screen, the MC is having a blast with a game where the character Eve announces the end of the daily grind and hypes up his performance. Right then, Lee Young-jin starts his shift, totally zoned into his device, completely lost in the game. At 29 years old, he's been working there for 3 years and has already sunk almost 10,000 hours into this virtual world. Suddenly, the store owner pops up, weirded out that his employee is calling him by his full name and the title of boss. The MC completely panics and braces for the worst, assuming he messed up big time. Next, he daydreams about whether a gorgeous new coworker will finally show up to take over the manager's spot. To the guy's surprise, the man drops the news that he's moving to Australia and wants to hand the store's management over to him. Faced with this out-of-the-blue offer, Young-jin is left totally speechless. Knowing the kid's bank account is basically crying, the boss promises to make the payment plan super easy and asks him what his ultimate dream is. Looking at the easels, he hears the owner cheering him on, saying this is the golden ticket to grab what he always wanted in life. Still spinning, the young man asks why such an insane opportunity was being handed to him of all people. The boss clears things up, explaining that 27 people had worked there before, but 0 of them showed his kind of hustle. Hyped by the compliment, the guy totally agrees that his customer service is top tier and he handles daily drama like a pro. Bursting with energy and good vibes, he stands up ready to tackle this wild new chapter of his journey. Riding high on the news, he strolls down the sidewalk, still unable to take his eyes off his favorite game. His former boss just watches him play with a smile, feeling great about his decision. Crossing the street without a care in the world, the guy thinks to himself that today is officially his lucky day. Suddenly, a blinding set of headlights flashes out of nowhere, lighting up the whole block around him. Startled by the high beams, he turns around and realizes that good old truck Kun has arrived to send him to the lobby. With 0 time to dodge, the guy shuts his eyes and wonders what server they're trying to transfer him to. The impact hits him head on, completely blindsiding the kid right in the middle of the road. Thanks to the brutal crash, his body gets launched into the air like a ragdoll, completely out of his control. Thing he knows, he hits the ground hard, taking a nasty scrape against the pavement. Banged up pretty badly, he finds it absolutely wild that he got double-teamed by 2 trucks at the same time, thinking fate did him super dirty. Accepting his game over, he just crosses his fingers that he'll respawn in a universe where he can be an OP warrior. Lying next to him on the asphalt, his phone screen lights up, flashing a notification that he finally hit the 10,000-hour milestone. Out of nowhere, his vision goes dark and a super strict voice echoes out, letting him know that all his VIP perks are officially cancelled. Chilling all alone in the middle of a massive hall, the kid hears someone ask if he has anything to say in his defense. Now piloting the body of a blonde student, he realizes he's getting judged by the absolute top dogs of the academy. Giving off major boss energy, the girl points a finger and addresses him directly as Wolfram von Lohengrin. The guy ducks his head in deep thought, instantly realizing that this girl is the legendary Eve from his game. The grasping how heavy the situation is, he figures out his wish completely backfired, and he just respawned right into the game's universe. The panic hits different when he remembers that this specific villain gets a super tragic ending right at the start of the plot. Running out of patience with the silent suspect, Eve presses him to spit it out if he has any final words before the ultimate banhammer drops. Striking a super arrogant pose, Wolfram covers half his face and announces they can't expel him, because he's out of there on his own terms. The catch is, in the original lore, the character pulls this exact stunt and ends up getting completely wrecked by the angry student mob. Because he was a young tyrant who only flexed the Emperor's power, his canon event is taking an embarrassingly hard fall. The MC remembers perfectly that, after dipping early on, this bad guy only respawns way later in the story. But his comeback is straight-up nightmare fuel, returning as a mindless monster that has to be put down for good. Ignoring his inner monologue, Eve stands her ground, stating that letting him walk away peacefully is the school's final act of mercy. The guy lifts his head and decides to fake it till he makes it, flashing a sarcastic smirk to hide his massive anxiety. The student rep looks confused by his vibe, totally lost as to why he's acting so chill in a mess like this. On the inside, though, he's screaming, fully aware that the second he steps off campus, he's getting jumped. Using his big brain to survive, he figures he needs to find a loophole in the rulebook ASAP to stay enrolled. With an ice-cold look, he scans the room, trying to cook up a crazy strategy to flip the script. Right then, he clocks Eve's behavior, remembering that despite her icy exterior, she's a straight A student who follows the rules to the letter. Weaponizing her personality trait, he gives a sly grin and asks if getting him kicked out is their actual endgame. Adding a little dramatic flair, he quotes the exact imperial decree word about stripping away all his VIP perks. The blonde nods, looking a bit thrown off, confirming that his privileges really were revoked. The guy keeps dragging the debate out, wondering out loud what that restriction actually means in practice. Losing her patience with his little show, the girl snaps back, asking what he's trying to prove with all this nonsense. Out of nowhere, Wolfram lets out a weird shout, stressing the word revoked like an absolute madman. The jump scare makes Eve flinch back in her chair, completely caught off guard by his chill reaction. Annoyed with the whole circus, she stands up and orders the defendant to stop fighting the inevitable and just bounce. But he just lowers his head, face hidden in shadows, and calmly drops the bomb that he can't do that. Maximum disrespect and a laid-back vibe, he declares loud and clear that there is zero chance he's leaving the academy. The girl plops back down, totally mind blown by such a blatant middle finger to the Emperor's orders. Keeping up the troll energy, he tells her to double-check the decree and point out exactly where it says the word expulsion. The whole council goes dead silent, trying to process the logic loop he just threw at them. Trying to clap back, she stammers, arguing that the order demands the removal of everything valuable to him. Pointing at himself, he clears up that the nerf only applies to his presidential perks, blowing wide open a legal loophole. He then decides to test the leader, asking if she remembers a highly specific article from the rulebook by heart. According to the bylaws, any enrolled student has the fundamental right to hit the books, completely separate from their political clout. The blonde spots the trap instantly, realizing that school enrollment isn't a perk the Empire can just delete. Shooting them a terrifying glare, he tells the council to take a hike and go focus on the upcoming elections. Furious at his sheer audacity, an elf on the council slams the table and screams that he can't just do whatever he wants. Totally losing it, she starts listing off all the luxury perks he's about to lose forever, trying to make him rage quit. Unbothered, the guy cuts off her rant, figuring out the elf thinks he's way too soft to handle life without imperial cash. Smirking like he owns the place, he claps back, asking what the big deal would be if he actually survived it. The council girl completely loses her cool, jaw on the floor at his unbreakable confidence. Flexing his hardcore experience as a retail worker in his past life, he demands she apologize for disrespecting his grind. Pressured by the kid's massive boss energy, the elf shrinks back and starts mumbling a super quiet apology. Seeing her teammate fold, Eve jumps up furious, yelling at her not to say sorry under any circumstances. Glaring at the guy with pure rage, the blonde curses the smooth, talking he used to twist the rules and dodge his ban. Maximum sarcasm, Wolfram claps for Evie's successful little rebellion and lets her know the president's chair is all hers now. Deep down, the kid thinks that if he were the main hero Keltis, he might actually try to rid up the main character. But considering his current mess, he knows they're basically total strangers right now. Already turning around to leave, he announces he's out, but the blonde yells for him to freeze. Super salty about his attitude, she demands to know the real reason he wants to stay at school even without his VIP status. Out of patience, the girl just raises her voice, desperate to figure out why he's being so stubborn. The guy turns his head, acting like he's searching for the most epic answer to drop on her. The suspense, he calmly replies that he still has a massive dream to chase. Eve is left completely stunned by his answer, while he drops a final warning that being president comes with heavy baggage. Waving without looking back, the former boss leaves the room, wishing them both luck on their new grind. Left alone in the hall, the new president is practically boiling with rage as she takes over her new spot. Outside the room, the guy casually strolls down the halls, listening to the girl's angry screams echoing off the walls. Super hyped about his brand, New Freedom, he officially declares the start of his playthrough as a shop owner. The truth is, this massive academy teaches way more than just spellcasting and sword swinging. Here, students grind to flex in all sorts of fields like business, etiquette, and even farming. Depending on your hustle, it's entirely possible to stack up an insane fortune while still taking classes. They also get the chance to test their limits by throwing hands with deadly beasts in survival matches. The school is basically considered a try-hard's paradise. The kid heads over to the campus bank to check his balance. He immediately assumes an elite noble must have a crazy amount of loot stashed away. But reality hits him like a freight train, and he almost collapses right there. The teller casually informs him that his account is rocking a solid zero balance. Sitting on the steps outside, he lets out a heavy sigh, realizing this playthrough is going to be playing on hard mode. Salty about his awful luck, he curses out the body's previous owner for blowing an entire fortune on absolute garbage. Looking at the nightmare of a bank statement, he realizes this guy's financial history is a straight-up tragedy. Apparently, the old villain blew all the cash on gacha games and shoddy items, leaving him completely broke. But suddenly, a light bulb goes off, and he remembers there have to be some epic drops left in his old dorm. Arriving at the VIP dorms, he overhears a staff member saying the move out is already done. The kid goes into shock again, completely baffled by how fast they evicted him. Without an ounce of chill, his luggage and a fancy sword are tossed outside onto the curb like trash. The worker bows politely, handing over his stuff and thanking him for his time there. A second later, the massive wooden door gets slammed aggressively right in his face. Totally lost, he ends up dragging himself to the campus gardens to try and figure his life out. He dumps his inventory on the grass, finding magic tomes, a shiny gem, and a seriously cool sword. While he's checking his loot, some nosy students start hovering around to see what's up. One girl instantly spots the weapon as an ultra-rare item and starts fangirling over it to her friend. Hating the spotlight, the MC shoots them a totally terrifying glare. The student nearly passes out from fear, stuttering his title in absolute panic. Freaking out, she runs away crying and begging for mercy, leaving him super weirded out by the whole thing. Thinking about the character's garbage reputation, he admits he still isn't used to how much he terrifies NPCs. Getting back on track, he realizes that at least he managed to salvage a few high-tier items. The side quest now is finding a way to flip this loot for a fair price without getting scammed. Using his knowledge from the game, he makes a beeline for the Dwarf Guild on campus. Putting all points into persuasion, he flexes the divine sword to the blacksmith, hyping it up as a flawless masterpiece. With zero interest, the dwarf crosses his arms and shoots down the offer instantly. The guy is super salty about the rejection, especially since in the lore, dwarves go crazy for rare drops. But the blacksmith just tells him to beat it, completely crushing the kid's hopes for some quick cash. Not ready to quit, he heads over to the Elf Guild to hunt down a new buyer. Totally sure he's got this in the bag, he shows off an ultra-expensive magic cloak, thinking the elves will go wild for it. To his shock, the elf rejects the trade immediately, making the guy ask if he even knows what tier the item is. The clerk eyes the fabric from a distance and admits it's definitely top-tier silk. Glad the item got some respect, the ex-leader eagerly asks why they won't just buy it then. Maximum ice in his veins, the elf turns around and flat-out says he just doesn't feel like doing business. Completely defeated, the kid drags his suitcases down the academy hallways. He remembers that in the game, Step 1 was farming rep with the factions by trading basic junk. But facing reality, he realizes his starting rep is already in the trash. Deep in thought, he tries to figure out why the local merchants hate his guts so much. Just then, he hears a weird noise from the street and turns to see what's going on. He spots the exact same dwarf blacksmith walking right next to him. The dude starts fake coughing super loudly, clearly trying to get his attention. The young man stops and flashes the sword scabbard, totally catching onto the merchant's little game. Playing along, he jokes that it's just a dwarf thing and demands the real tea on why he got rejected. The blacksmith drops the act and admits the only problem with the deal is the fact that his name is Wolfram. The kid doesn't get it, thinking his garbage rep shouldn't ruin such an easy flip. Turns out, the news of his downfall already hit the front pages, and nobody wants to give him the time of day anymore. Still missing the point, the blonde points out he doesn't need a title to sell a weapon, asking if the guild is just broke. The dwarf laughs at the bait, guaranteeing that the price of the sword and cloak is basically pocket change to them. Getting serious, he explains that on campus, the only boss anyone respects is the student council. And since the current president hates the guy's guts, nobody has the spine to cross her by trading with him. It finally clicks for the kid, realizing Eve orchestrated a flawless boycott to ruin his bank account. Thanking him for the pro tip, he says bye to the dwarf and continues his trek down the sidewalk. Carrying all that baggage, he walks totally alone under the blazing academy sun. Watching the kid walk off so calmly, the dwarf thinks to himself that the former tyrant seems like a completely different dude now. Further down the road, the guy drops his bags and collapses onto a random bench from pure exhaustion. Completely wiped out, he complains about his terrible RNG, accepting that surviving here is going to be way harder than he thought. Sizing everything up, the guy notices he lost his student perks and urgently needs to join some campus faction. But the pressure of real life is heavy, leaving him totally stuck on what to do next. Sprawled out on the bench, the former boss groans from hunger and zero stamina. As the day wraps up, his fatigue hits critical levels, and he starts losing the fight against sleep. With nowhere else to go, he just passes out right in the middle of the plaza. Fast forward to nighttime, an unexpected voice calls out to him in the dark. A massive dude appears standing right over him, sizing him up from head to toe. The jump scare is real, making Wolfram leap up and panic, ask who's there. Seeing the kid freak out, the man apologizes and says he didn't mean to spook him. Then, he offers up a basket full of fresh bread, guessing the kid needed some HP recovery. Still a bit spaced out, he takes the food, barely believing this random act of kindness. Without a second thought, he inhales the whole thing, proving he was starving out of his mind. Watching the sad display, the man mentions the ex-leader is looking pretty rough. Embarrassed, the kid brushes it off, saying he just couldn't find a save point to sleep at, and thanks him big time for the snack. Suddenly, a memory hits him, and he tells the guy to hold on a sec. Driven by curiosity, the MC asks if the guy's name is a very specific one he recalled. Instantly, he remembers the old game and realizes he just bumped into the perfect NPC. In the playthrough, this merchant would literally beg players to take over his shop, acting as a massive financial trap for noobs. Confirming his ID, the guy introduces himself as Phil from the grocery store, saying he was about to ditch the place, while the kid sees this as his ultimate cheat code. Riding a massive wave of hype, Wolfram shakes the man's hands like a maniac. Looking him dead in the eye, he tells the guy to pay very close attention to his offer. Radiating absolute villain confidence, the ex-president demands the busted, debt-ridden store be transferred to his name immediately. The chat moves at lightning speed, with the old owner basically crying tears of joy to dump the real estate. Super relieved, Phil says he can finally go back home without any guilt. Standing in front of the rundown shop, the kid celebrates his new base, convinced he just pulled an SSR drop. Now behind the counter, he waits, hyping himself up for the customers to start pouring in. The catch as time drags on and the place stays a complete ghost town. To make it worse, all the food inventory rots away without a single sale being made. Broken, trapped, the game over, bankrupt screen flashes in his mind, dropping the guy to the cold floor in total despair. Suddenly, he lets out a weird scream and snaps awake in the middle of the shop, realizing how bad things could get. Gasping for air and sweating bullets, he jumps up from behind the desk trying to process what just happened. Looking around, he sees all the products are perfectly fine on the shelves. A huge wave of relief washes over the kid, thanking his lucky stars it was just a bad dream. Right then, the chime of the door opening makes him snap his head toward the entrance. The old owner walks in super chill, asking if the kid managed to get some good sleep. Cutting straight to the chase, Wolfram slams a fat stack of cash on the table, leaving Phil totally bewildered by the amount. Worried about the kid, the man asks if it wouldn't be smarter to save the coins to restock inventory later. Deep down, the kid is crying over trading his OP items for this dump, knowing they would have sold for crazy amounts if he wasn't so hated. Doing some quick mental math, he figures that despite the true value of the loot, the final trade was actually somewhat balanced. Almost forgetting to mention it, the old owner says he brought up the deal with the landlord and that they insisted on meeting the new tenant. Thinking the request is super sus, the blonde asks why the landlord would ever want to meet someone with a reputation as toxic as his. Right on cue, a woman's voice echoes from the doorway apologizing for running late, giving Phil the perfect excuse to speedwalk out of there. The heavy footsteps of the newcomer echo on the wooden floorboards, giving off major boss fight vibes. The kid freezes up hearing that ice-cold, yet undeniably fancy tone. Looking at the door, he spots the mysterious girl's long dark hair cascading all the way down to her waist. With his eyes wide open in pure shock, the guy instantly clocks exactly who this woman is. Walking in with ultimate alpha energy, the young woman flexes all her class and dominance. He immediately remembers she was the runner-up in the magic department and an absolute mid-game boss in the lore. But the most terrifying detail hits him like a truck. She is his character's canon fiancé. A heavy silence fills the grocery store as they just stand there having a staring contest. Having zero patience for his buffering, the girl sharply demands that he say something. Trying to hold his ground, the MC just asks what she's actually doing there. Dripping with sarcasm, the mage looks around the dump and says his pathetic little purchase was clearly a message meant for her. Keeping the roast going, she asks if he's begging for a bailout or if this is just another one of his tyrant tantrums. Nothing to say, the guy narrows his eyes, trying to gauge just how much danger he's in from these accusations. Visibly triggered, she points out that the only good thing about the ex-president was his infinite greed. Getting even more aggressive, the girl asks if, after getting rolled by her sister for his title, he decided to become a parasite living off his fiancé. Going completely rigid, she states there's no room for a loser like him on her turf. Lowering his head to hide his panic, he listens as she orders him to get out of her sight immediately. Fear completely hacks the kid's brain as he desperately searches for a way to not get evicted from his only save point. Recalling her character stats, the guy knows she's the heir to a billionaire clan that runs the market, on top of being a magic prodigy. Knowing how heavily nerfed his body is, he figures instantly that he'll get deleted if this mage decides to actually throw hands. Biting his finger to focus, he forces his brain into overdrive, digging through any game lore to save his skin. Like a total lightbulb moment, a high-risk idea pops into his head, giving him the perfect way to reverse the situation. Looking back at the girl, he calls her name with a rock, solid, purposeful voice. Clapping back at her insults with pure ego, the guy laughs at the idea that such a tiny, irrelevant building could belong to her. The girl's icy exterior cracks, getting super offended by the disrespect and ordering him to repeat what he just said. Moving super casually, he excuses himself by saying someone of his tier wouldn't bother remembering such trash tier spots, calling her the witch of the rebellion. Not buying his act, she calls Cap and demands the real reason he bought this specific little mart. Knowing the exact cheat code to break her, he shoots her a razor-sharp look and declares he bought it out of pure, unadulterated ambition. The unexpected comeback catches the girl completely off guard, instantly shattering her superior vibe. Getting her swagger back, she counters the attack, calling him pathetic for talking about glory while stuck in poverty. Overflowing with confidence, the hero fires back that he hasn't hit rock bottom and he absolutely hasn't quit. Staring a hole through her, he loudly declares that this tiny shop will be the spawn point of his future empire. Intrigued by the unbreakable confidence of the fiancé everyone thought was washed up, the girl asks what's so special about this dump. Casually pacing around the shop, he says that the real shadow plays have to happen where nobody is looking. Using the grocery store as a front, he lays out his master plan to recruit ultra-talented NPCs to his cause. But she's not sold that easily, doubting he has the radar to actually spot real prodigies. Casually holding up a piece of bread, he counters her trash talk by name, dropping the druid that the mage respects so much. Isla's eyes go wide, feeling the heavy impact of him dropping such hyper-specific lore. Without missing a beat, the kid lists off the Academy's hidden gems, calling out rookie fire mages and undercover sword masters. Completely shook, the young woman asks how he managed to datamine such classified student info. Using her full government name, the guy arrogantly asks if she still has the guts to doubt his vision. To wrap up his performance flawlessly, he claims he ditched the council on purpose so he could run the academy from the shadows. At this point, the ex-leader can barely hide his smirk, thinking his supervillain roleplay is an absolute 10 out of 10. Setting an authoritative mood, he throws it in her face that the perfect rebellion always starts where people least expect it. Striking a revolutionary pose, he knows this is the exact core of his fiancé's personality. Deep down, he's apologizing for stealing her iconic catchphrase, but he knows it's necessary to avoid getting wiped out. A little overwhelmed by his aura, the sorceress blushes and admits she's having a hard time wrapping her head around it. Playing it cool, Wolfram says he doesn't need her to believe him, since trust is only worth something after the receipts are shown. Stopping in his tracks, the ex-dictator warns her that he's not going to ask for a single favor. Throwing a terrifying glare over his shoulder, he orders her not to get in his way ever again. Keeping his voice dead serious, the guy swears he'll delete her without a second thought if she tries to mess with his grind. Hiding his mortal terror, he sweats bullets praying that his little theater act gave her the edgy villain she wanted to see. Taking the challenge in stride, Ayla agrees to his terms and completely blindsides the guy. In a split second, the mage snaps her fingers, gathering a terrifying amount of energy in her hands. Cloaked in a dark aura, she takes slow, menacing steps toward him inside the shop. With a death glare, she dares the kid to try and kick her out of his spot right then and there. The hero's confidence shatters instantly, paralyzed by fear at the literal boss mechanic that might end his run. Beams of magic smash the shelves around them, flexing the girl's absolute monster stats. Showing zero mercy, she closes the gap, trapping the defenseless kid in a corner. Charging her ultimate, the mage raises her hand to blast him into next week. Wolfram totally loses it and grabs his head, completely lost as to why she has so much aggro toward him. Sweating buckets, he desperately tries to brainstorm a new lie to make it out of this cutscene alive. Pinned to the wall by her aura, he accepts that it's GG's and his playthrough ends right here. But suddenly, the magic dissipates from the room, and the girl mentions she knows he doesn't have the stats to beat her. Turning around to leave, she leaves the guy experiencing massive whiplash from her sudden mood swing. Walking toward the door, Ayla admits that the fire in his eyes proved his ambition wasn't capped. Pausing outside, she drops one last warning that she'll be watching his every move like a hawk. The second she vanishes, his legs give out and he crashes hard onto the floorboards. Sprawled in the dirt, he gasps for air, thanking his lucky stars he survived that encounter. Catching his breath, the guy gets totally fired up, promising himself he's going to survive to see tomorrow. With his stamina bar refilled, he drags himself across the wood floor, ready for phase 2 of his master plan. Wasting no time, he scrapes together his remaining coins and grips them tight. Holding his cash, he officially declares the start of his merchant playthrough in this crazy universe. Later on, a delivery girl knocks on the door, throwing a salute and announcing that a special order has dropped. She states the total damage is 3,524,800 coins, asking for just a quick signature. But when she makes eye contact, the worker gets a massive jump scare realizing exactly who the customer is. Keeping his cool, the guy just asks if it really matters to the company who signs for the loot. Terrified of his toxic rep, she drops the clipboard anyway and books it without looking back. The massive wooden crate slams onto the floor, kicking up a cloud of dust all over the shop. Leaning against the wood, the merchant finds it hilarious that the worker just eated the package and ran. Sweating from anxiety, he explains that the shipping company would never do a direct drop off for him as a regular student. Turns out, the school's strict market guidelines and anti-monopoly rules totally flipped that dynamic. Shooing away the other helpers who were shaking at the door, the blonde tells them to drop the gear and scram. Using his shop's business license, he basically forces the companies to deliver, completely bypassing the student boycott. Overflowing with swagger, he celebrates finding the ultimate glitch in the matrix that made his first big business move a total deluge. A chill new morning dawns on the paved streets surrounding the academy's massive walls. Sipping her tea by the window, Isla wonders how the guy managed to bypass the trade ban set up by her rival. Taking a small sip, the sorceress is super curious to see what his next big brain play will be. Back at the mart, the ex-leader is already up and grinding, stirring a giant cauldron for step 2 of his sales strat. In the early AIM hours, the front of the massive magic department is a total ghost town. Suddenly, a long, drag-out groan breaks the silence of the courtyard. A bunch of students drag themselves up the stairs looking like actual zombies, begging for a professor to save them. Thanks to the brutal rules of this place, they spend 4 whole years studying the hardcore meta of high-level magic. After clearing the core curriculum and passing a bunch of exams, a lucky few snag their diplomas and get to enjoy freedom. But the ones with insane stats get dragged right back into the locked laboratories. Pulling all-nighters as assistants on super sketchy projects, they sacrifice their HP bars in the name of ultimate knowledge. They burn the midnight oil writing endless papers, drowning in stress that drains every drop of their stamina. All this suffering creates the most feared and broken faction in the entire school, the grad students. Approaching a student who looks 1 second away from logging out, Wolfram congratulates the scholar on his insane grind. Next to a hastily thrown-together stall, the blonde offers a steaming cup of soup to fight off the morning chill. Shaking from fatigue, the university student grabs the cup, instantly hit by the cozy smell of the food. The second he gulps it down, he gets a massive stamina buff that cures his body's exhaustion on the spot. Seeing the hype spreading to everyone else, the ex-tyrant calmly announces the cups are going for 10,000 coins a pop. Throwing in 3 free refills, he explains the math works out to about 3,000 per serving, making it sound like an absolute steal to the exhausted crowd. One of the students takes another chug, soaking up all the cozy vibes the food gives off. Feeling their HP regenerate, the young mages look at him in awe and ask what kind of cheat code he put in there to save them like that. Proud of his craft, he admits he just boiled down some leftover dried fish and random veggies that weren't selling at the shop. The reality is, this basic mystery mush is crazy good stats, acting as the ultimate stamina potion for this specific crowd. The rumor that the former boss is now running a street food cart leaves one grad student completely shook. A girl with brown hair asks if the blonde wants to check out something a bit more interesting around there. Popping the lid off a wooden box with flair, he flexes a premium item and asks if she recognizes the drop. Totally confident in its tier, he swears it's not just some random candy, but a royal-approved consumable. The duo's jaws drop when they realize they're staring at the legendary Millionaire's Suite. This Empire-crafted item goes for the ridiculous price of 500,000 coins each. Showing off a container completely full of them, the ex-president says he's only charging 50 grand for the whole stash. To keep the meta balanced, he announces a strict limit of 1 cup per player per day. The 2 students lose their minds over the discount, and the guy invites them both to taste test the treat. The kid can't even hide his grin, totally hyped that his marketing strat was a massive success. The day stays chill and sunny out in front of the academy building. Strolling through the area, a redhead princess congratulates Eve on snatching the student council crown. The young president politely accepts the hype from the upperclassmen. During their chat, the princess mentions she's super pumped to read the new research on light magic theory. Cutting the small talk, the blonde states her main quest is wiping out any toxic behavior that ruins the school's vibe. The senior praises the president's focus and she loved a supposedly wholesome move the president pulled recently. Handing over a sleek black package, the redhead gifts some of the ultra-expensive sweets to the council leader. Without a second thought, Eve pops the candy and starts obsessing over the amazing fruity smell. Staring at the little green orb, she feels a massive wave of chill energy wash over her entire body. Suddenly, her eyes go wide as the crazy, intense flavor completely takes over. Flashing a shy smile, the princess notices her hype and asks if the gift hit the spot. Totally mind blown, the president says it feels like a giant hug for her stressed out brain. Curious about where this top-tier item dropped from, she asks if it's a new invention from the research students. The redhead goes pale instantly, horrified to realize the leader genuinely had zero clue about the sweets. Panicking hard, the senior stammers that she assumed the merch was the president's own idea and not some kind of punishment. The vibe drops below zero immediately, and Eve shifts into boss mode, demanding to know where the snacks actually came from. Terrified by her massive aura, the princess can barely string a sentence together. Out of options, she just points at the building's front doors to drop the location ping. The candy slips right out of the president's fingers, hitting the floor in dead silence. Boiling with rage, she stomps toward the exit to deal with the drama herself. Far away from that mess, the little shop is doing numbers on one of the quietest sidewalks in town. Sprawled out on the shop floor, Wolfram groans about his zero stamina and cries over having to log in for work again tomorrow. The door gets kicked open with pure violence, followed by a hate-filled voice screaming the ex-leader's name. Barging in with zero chill, Eve yells that she finally found his little hiding spot. The guy tries to get up, still a bit dizzy, feeling like this exact chaotic cutscene is giving him major DG vu. In the Empire's lore, the founder of Lohengrin was an absolute unit when it came to brains and brawn. His descendants also inherited insanely broken magic stats. But the young student council president was on a whole other level, basically a glitch in the Matrix. She unlocked mana at age 4 and was already spamming high-tier spells by 5. Now at 16, she's a literal cheat code that makes even the veteran mages sweat. Because of her insane scaling, most people think her stats are on par with the Empire's original founder. In the game, her idle animation was just aggressively snacking on the couch, showing off a way more laid-back vibe. Snapping back to reality, the blonde side eyes the dusty shelves and admits she's been keeping tabs on his moves. Judging the super basic setup, she crosses her arms and demands to know what kind of sketchy strat he's running here. The MC sighs and tells her that throwing out random ban accusations is way out of line. Leaning on the counter, he fact-checks her, stating this isn't just some regular grocery store. Pitching his business model, the blonde explains that a convenience store basically carries a little bit of everything. Sitting back totally chill, he declares the business is legit and asks what her actual beef is. Not buying it for a second, Eve points a finger, accusing him of using exploits to snag the real estate. She glares down at an official document, looking absolutely furious. Annoyed by her spamming complaints, the guy smacks the counter, swearing that his whole run is completely TOS compliant. The girl raises her voice, guessing his opening move was trying to poison the grad student's food supply. Keeping his cool, Wolfram flashes the magic health inspector's passing grade, telling her she shouldn't doubt the mods. She freezes for a frame, unable to find a single typo in the kid's flawless paperwork. At catching her getting tilted, the owner tells her to kick rocks if she doesn't have any actual receipts to show. Refusing to take the L, Eve slams the table and brings up the millionaire sweets drama. Shaking from rage and second-hand embarrassment, she accuses him of embezzling funds to wail on such premium items. Unbothered, he cuts off her yelling and just asks if she liked how the candy tasted. The leader completely breaks character and mumbles that his snacks were way better than the palace drops. Flexing his massive ego, the owner points to the back room and brags that he crafted the whole batch himself using his own farmed fruit. Out back, his little DI garden is leveling up nicely in the sun. A hand reaches into the branches and snaps a perfect red apple right off the tree. Without missing a beat, he tosses the fruit for the president to catch. Eve holds the apple looking super sus, checking out how shiny the skin is. Unable to resist the buff, she takes a bite and gets hit with the super fresh flavor. The blonde just watches in silence, realizing she's acting exactly like her NPC script from the game. Happily chewing away, she drops her boss persona and looks genuinely thrilled, exposing her massive debuff for anything sweet. The guy gets a random shiver, wondering why he's getting so flustered seeing her act all goofy in real life. Dropping her name, he ruins the mood and forces her to realize she just totally embarrassed herself. Taking advantage of the stun frame, he whips out a paper bag and offers her a crazy discount. The blonde physically cringes, shaking with rage over taking such a massive L. Back at the student council room, absolute silence fills the chat. An elf assistant quietly points out that the room smells insanely sweet. Sitting at her desk, Eve sweats buckets, praying nobody figures out what she's doing. With the candy still in her mouth, she remembers the guy's warning that she was going to go bankrupt from her sugar addiction. Putting on her best poker face but failing the willpower check, she runs another piece of candy. The assistant just stares at the president's desperate snacking, completely lost. Somewhere else, Wolfram is planting Yggdrasil seeds in the dirt behind his shop. To speed up the timer, he dumps water mixed with a potion onto the fresh sprouts. Then he just sits in the dirt waiting for the magic to happen. He clicks on a golden music box that just spams positive affirmations. This useless cosmetic item was originally just to lower the stress meter of the grad students in the game. But he's exploiting a game mechanic where the audio actually speeds up farming times. Soaking up the vibes, massive, glowing apples instantly spawn on the branches. In the kitchen, he carefully melts the apples down in a pot. Totally in the zone, he crafts the candy, keeping the heat perfectly balanced. He drops an edible slime into the mix to hit the exact right texture. Once it cools off, he pours the batter into a mold to make perfect little spheres. Moving at max speed, every single candy gets wrapped in super flashy, shiny plastic. The crafting sequence finishes, completing a massive basket of the merch everyone has been going crazy for. Collapsed on the shop floor, he cries over his garbage physical stats and begs for a bigger stamina bar. Out of nowhere, the door creaks, signaling a player has entered the zone. Panning hard, he announces the shop is closed, but then notices Isla standing there staring at him. Takes one look at her fiancé looking like absolute trash on the floorboards. Without skipping a beat, she scoops the guy up under her arm, like he weighs nothing. Holding him with zero effort, the mage asks if he's doing okay. Trying to process her broken strength stats, he stutters back that he's doing fantastic. Chilling on the fancy sofa, the witch admits she actually found his recent moves pretty top tier. Sipping her tea, she praises his flawless strat of targeting the grad students for sales. Feeling himself a bit, he agrees he managed to network with the biggest brains on campus. Riding the good vibes, he offers the guest one of his famous custom sweets. Without hesitating, she takes the candy and pops it in for a taste test. Her expression changes instantly, completely mind blown by how insanely good it is. The kid lets out a sigh of relief, choosing to keep the gross secret ingredient to himself. Seeing he actually has some skills, Isla decides to back his play and asks what loot he wants in exchange. Totally focused on his farming grind, he immediately requests a map of the eastern forest. The next day, the scene shifts to the massive night department hub. At the quest counter, the receptionist adjusts her glasses and greets the new player. The kid strolls up with his hands in his pockets, giving off a terrifying aura that puts her in full panic mode. Shaking, she asks what Wolfram needs, and he requests an escort mission to the forest. Terrified, she hands over the roster of available knights, complete with their rates and danger scaling. Scanning the docks, he figures he needs to pick carefully because his aggro rating is still sky high. He scrolls the list until he spots a very familiar username. Totally locked in on his choice, he announces he found the absolute perfect carry for his quest. A second later, a student bursts in running and begs for forgiveness for lagging behind. Full of energy, she throws a salute and introduces herself as Neftyrian, but tells him to just call her Nefty. The guy says a polite hello, remembering her goofy nickname from the game lore. The short-haired girl, infamous in the community as the queen of being broke, breaks into a cold sweat when she recognizes the ex-leader. The vibe gets super heavy as they move to sort out the contract details inside. Sitting across from her new boss, Nefty gulps and asks his name again, just to make sure she's not hallucinating. Trying to keep it professional, the student shakes his hand and begs him to just use her nickname. He says all the formal stuff is a waste of time, but the girl insists that's just how you treat the shot callers. At this, the kid feels pretty good seeing she acts exactly like her NPC counterpart. He looks at her solid stance and totally locked in eyes, recognizing the true essence of the game. According to the lore, this girl carries an ocean of family debt and will take on literally any quest for a few coins. Super upbeat and hardworking, rumors say she literally survives on grass and tree sap when her wallet hits zero. But even when she's starving, her moral compass is rock solid and she never accepts shady missions. Thinking about that, the guy chills out, knowing he won't get randomly kidnapped or scammed by her. Getting straight to the point, the girl asks which zone they're patrolling. He replies that the quest is just wandering the eastern forest on minimum wage. The girl almost drops dead hearing she's getting base pay, leaving him super confused by her reaction. To sweeten the deal, he throws in 2 health potions just in case her HP gets too low. But the student keeps her dead inside expression, making it obvious she thinks the offer is trash. Figuring out her ultimate weakness, he tosses out the final bait and promises to cover premium meals during the run. Like magic, the warrior's eyes light up and she instantly accepts the contract, swearing to protect him with her life. Wrapping up the details, he asks how she handles the hit and run meta. Basically, the strat is to enter the zone, farm the required monster drops, and dip immediately. Once they hit the kill quota, the party bails so they don't trigger any random boss encounters. To hype her up, he offers bonus gold for every mob she takes down after the first 5. Nefty is totally down for the grind, but stops and says she has one unbreakable rule before they start. Pointing at herself, she declares she'll abandon the party instantly if he asks her to do anything against TOS. With maximum main character energy, she proves she won't trade her morals for any amount of loot. Throwing his backpack on, the guy thinks her speech is super cringe and tells her to quit yapping and start walking. With the deal locked in, the duo marches down the halls to kick off their side quest. Now deep in the jungle, the sound of his terrible stamina bar struggling echoes through the ancient trees. He begs to slow the pace down, while she jokes that walking slower just runs up his bill. The zone is famously known as a noob-friendly area, only spawning low-level mobs and tiny goblins. Flexing some insane mechanics, the girl lands a critical hit and one-shots the local slime. Hyped about the easy W, she celebrates, while the blonde thinks even he could have clapped that mob. Walking a bit further, they stumble upon the legendary garden of colored beans hidden in the brush. The warrior cheers that they made it before the timer ran out, while he crouches down to finally check out the magic crops. Pumped by the loot drop, the knight gets into position to help farm the items. But the guy starts ripping the pods out of the dirt looking pretty annoyed, complaining that VIPs shouldn't have to get their hands dirty. Seeing him complain, Nefty crosses her arms and refuses to help, reminding him that farming isn't in her escort package. Using the perfect counter strat, he offers her an extra 10 grand an hour, and she flips instantly, claiming she's basically a pro farmer. She speed pulls a blue bean and asks if she should focus on those drops first. The boss tells her to watch her HP, since the water ones lose durability super fast if they get bumped. The student follows orders quietly, realizing this guy isn't the absolute raid boss the whole school made him out to be. After an intense grinding session, the wooden baskets are totally maxed out with all kinds of magic veggies. Completely drained, he calls for a quick AFK break to eat before they start the trek back. Nefty goes absolutely feral at the idea, literally drooling at the thought of a 5-star feast from the prince. But her hype gets instantly deleted when he just hands her a rock-hard, stale piece of dark bread. The warrior stares at the item in total disbelief, and he sarcastically asks if she has a problem with the drop. Furious, she draws her weapon, trying to hide how devastated she is, giving him a massive jump scare with the sudden aggro. Trying to avoid a PvP match, he tells her to chill and says he's going to use a culinary cheat code on the food. Showing off his inventory, he pulls out vanilla seeds, milk, and a bubble. Crushing the items in his hand, he asks the girl what she thinks the crafting result will be. With that, he dumps the powder into a jar to start cooking up the recipe. Putting all his stamina into it, he violently shakes the jar, blending the buffs together. Showing off some smooth mechanics, he shakes the thing like a pro bartender. Popping the lid, a blast of cold smoke rolls out, revealing a white cream with the absolute perfect texture. Using a spoon, he heavily layers the cream over the sad piece of bread. Smirking, because he knows he just cooked, he hands the crafted item to his helper for a taste test. The girl holds the snack like it's a legendary drop, totally captivated by the sweet smell of his makeshift recipe. Unable to hold back, she takes a massive bite, feeling the cream literally melt on her tongue. The flavor is so broken and OP that her eyes go wide with pure shock. Happy with his successful craft, he says this little exploit can save even the most trash-tier meals. Literally crying tears of joy over the taste, Nefty hypes the food up non-stop, leaving him wondering if she's overreacting a bit. Finding her crying hilarious, he tells her to remember to breathe and maybe chew her food. But she deletes the snack in seconds, crying about how she spent her whole run eating grass when food could actually be this good. Suddenly, a weird flash goes off and he turns his head, totally confused about what triggered the event. A floating system window pops up right in his face, lighting up that section of the jungle. The notification hits him with a GG for the combo and lets him know he unlocked an ultra-rare cooking manual on his profile. Blown by the pop-up, he realizes how broken this is when he reads the fine print. The panel confirms he's literally the first player on the entire server to combine those seeds like that. Refusing to believe his eyes, he asks out loud how it's even mathematically possible to be the first one to figure this out. The UI keeps pinging, letting him know his taste stats got a massive permanent buff for local flavors. As a reward drop, a glowing orb spawns right into his hand out of thin air. The screen confirms he just scored a super rare level, 7 bean as a bonus gift. Checking out the colorful item, he instantly does the math on how many coins he can flip it for. With the sun going down, the duo calls it a day and starts the long walk back to the academy. Making it back to the gates in one piece, the warrior waves goodbye super hyped and thanks him a ton for the payout. Letting his sore muscles chill, he says the raid was a total dubby, while the girl gets a little shy remembering that god-tier meal. Super pumped, she admits the run was amazing, especially since everyone at the academy swore those plants would self-destruct if you looked at them wrong. Wiping away happy tears, she confesses she never imagined combining those random items would craft something so insanely good. Thinking about her dialogue, it hits him that the trick really was a server first, and he gets super curious. Letting his merchant brain take over, he decides to double-check and asks if literally nobody on campus knew how to mix those beans. The girl shrugs and says the spawn pool is way too huge out there, so nobody bothers risking their run to test new recipes. The reality check hits him like a truck that night, confirming that absolutely zero players had ever attempted this super basic combo. Stunned by how behind the meta this society is, he can barely believe such an easy strat went undiscovered. The system menu pops back up asking him to confirm the new entry in his recipe log. Leaning against the counter in his rundown shop, he pulls an all-nighter brainstorming his new business strats. Staring at the empty shelves, the kid analyzes all the data he mined about this world's economy. Putting the pieces together, he realizes the Academy supply chain is completely bugged, forcing everyone to rely on trash-tier items. And thanks to this massive glitch, basic stuff costs way more than ever did in the version of the game he used to play. Examining the rare bean, he notices a massive lore detail: the devs, or authorities, basically nerfed exploration and banned open-world hunting. Pulling up the chat log he had with the receptionist, he remembers asking why none of the students were taking on open-world quests. In his memory, the girl acted like the question was insane and guaranteed that no one would voluntarily risk their HP outside the safe zones. That specific piece of dialogue acted like a massive light bulb for the kid, showing him how the NPCs actually lived. Now rocking a confident smirk, he deduces that the whole server is hard stuck because the fear of getting wiped out is completely blocking any new strats. Back when it was just a game, grinding hardcore maps for monster drops was the best part of the loop. But looking at it through a real-life filter, he realizes the aggro out there is literal nightmare fuel for any average fighter. Knowing this is a hardcore run with zero respawns, the fear of pain and getting sent to the lobby permanently paralyzes everyone. Opting for the safe strat, players would rather stay locked inside the city walls than go hunting for new updates in the wild. Thinking about his own survival, the villain realizes that crossing paths with the actual main character will only result in an early and pointless game over. With his game plan locked in, he picks 2 main quests, hit the gold cap with the grocery store, and max out at least 1 broken skill before graduation. Holding up 3 fingers, he mentally highlights the most important step of his entire escape route. Determined to dodge his avatar's trash ending, he vows to stay a million miles away from the main story events and just live a chill life. But his hopes for peace get instantly deleted when the council elf kicks down the convenience store door, screaming his name. Checking his spreadsheets, the guy asks why she's bringing all this toxic aggro into his shop. Totally unhinged, the council girl slams a stack of papers on the counter, demanding he explain how he managed to burn through that much cash solo. The ex-president gets a major jump scare, his eyes going wide when he sees the actual size of his official debt. The realization that his body's previous owner burnt millions on party runs flashes in his head, while she screams that he bankrupted the entire council. Having a total meltdown, the elf cries that she has zero clue how to balance the yearly budget with a hole that massive. Watching girl completely lose her mind, he tries to de-escalate by handing her a cold drink, while they figure out the money glitch. The UI pings instantly, letting him know the magic strawberry shake craft was a success and is about to be his best-selling item. Handing over the icy drink, he hears Eve demand to know what the point of a convenience store even is, keeping his voice super chill. He explains the whole vibe is just making life easier for the customers. Holding the cup, Eve isn't buying his wholesome act for a second, asking if he suddenly switched to a good alignment and cares about the whole school. The ex-leader takes a sip of his own recipe and tells the blonde to put a pause on her interrogation for a sec. Suspicious, she asks what kind of play he's making. The merchant just tells her to cast a freeze spell on the cream, claiming it hits different when it's iced. Trying to start beef, the president claps back that he should be serving it pre-frozen if his whole brand is about making life easy for students. Flashing an awkward smile, the hero admits he literally doesn't have the stats for it, confessing his mana bar is basically at 0. Realizing how embarrassingly nerfed he is, the blonde lets out a heavy sigh of pure disappointment. Deciding not to make a big deal out of it, she holds out her hand and drops an ice spell right on top of the drink. The magic coats the dessert, perfectly maxing out the texture and giving the cream an insane refreshing buff. Hyped by the cold upgrade, the president uses the straw and takes a massive sip of the new drop. The god-tier flavor makes her eyes literally sparkle, completely obsessing over the sweet aftertaste. The guy lets out a sarcastic laugh seeing his rival getting instantly addicted to the recipe, and she angrily tells him to shut his mouth, embarrassed about breaking character. The cup is practically empty in a matter of seconds, confirming the item's stats are absolutely broken. Trying to salvage her elite noble aesthetic, the girl casually compliments the flavor without simping too hard and asks for the price. Locked in on his profit margins, he sets the tag at 12,000 coins. Thinking the price is a total scam, the leader drops the idea that he should set up a pop-up shop to sell it exclusively during the massive freshman welcome party. The guy thinks her marketing strat is absolute genius and promises to think it over. Salty about his lack of manners, Eve demands at least a formal thank you for carrying his business plan. But the old dictator just looks away and ghosts her demand, preferring to stay quiet rather than show any appreciation. The blonde ignores his edgy act and goes back to her straw, noticing that the flavor profile of the sweet has some hidden stats underneath. Suddenly, she snaps her head to the side, looking like she just unlocked a secret, ultra-expensive ingredient hidden in the recipe. Catching her reaction, he flashes a razor-sharp smirk, knowing exactly what kind of mental gymnastics she's doing right now. Using the opening, the blonde guy says the taste test is on the house, but traps her into buying some of the shop's candy anyway. Cornered, the president whispers that she's totally broke at the moment. Stepping outside, the president sighs in relief, mentioning that the new product is going to be a huge carry for the council's budget. Happy with the interaction, the merchant just tells her good luck on her run. Before dipping, Eve shoots him a dead, serious look and announces her new administration is going to patch the whole system. So, she orders him to stay in his lane and not draw aggro. Super chill, the kid closes his eyes and says that is literally his master plan, swearing he's not trying to start PvP with anyone. Even though the chat seemed pretty relaxed, the heavy vibe in the room makes it clear their rivalry is nowhere near its final phase. Once the beef cools down, the ex-leader drops the act and locks eyes with the girl, looking completely serious. Dropping the formalities, he says he has a quick question before she logs off. Annoyed, the young girl tells him to run his sentence because her time is expensive. Getting straight to it, the blonde casually brings up how wild it is that the top freshman this year is just a random commoner, pretending like he barely remembers the guy's name. Thinking it's super weird for him to care about a low-tier player, she narrows her eyes and demands to know the real reason he's suddenly dataminning this kid. Rolling a perfect deception check, Wolfram smiles nicely, promising it's just random trivia and that he has zero plans to even go near the noob. Right after, the name Keltis is finally dropped, confirming the exact identity of the server's main hero. The high-res image of the hyped-up, super charismatic red-haired rookie flashes vividly in the villain's mind. Hearing the president confirm his stats, the shop owner's face goes completely dark, realizing how dangerous this new info is. Staring at the ceiling, he feels a crushing wave of anxiety, knowing a massive raid event is approaching fast. Trapped in the game's code, he realizes the main story event is about to trigger, dragging his little side hustle right into the middle of the PvP zone. Remembering the freshman party is right around the corner, he calculates the exact gold required to craft all his supplies. He pours the batter into the pan with laser focus, putting all his effort into crafting the next batch of sweets. Going full try hard behind the counter, he clears out the queue of students as fast as his mechanics allow. The players leave super happy with their buffs, and he tells them to keep grinding their stats in class. With the welcome party basically here, he knows the main gears of the plot are about to start spinning for real. He remembers that the original endings depend entirely on the hero's dialogue choices and which girl's route he decides to main. If the hero joins the mage faction and locks into the council leader's route, a very specific storyline gets triggered. On this path, the playthrough ends with him becoming the blonde's ultimate tank, like a true knight in shining armor simping for her. However, there are also some seriously cursed bad endings, especially when a certain happy mage crashes the final boss fights. Just thinking about that terrifying witch makes his stamina bar drop from pure stress. But at the end of the day, the fate of the entire server rests on whatever Keltis decides to do. Absolutely refusing to get involved, he decides to just focus on his cooking simulator while the hero does the actual heavy lifting. Out of nowhere, he spots a very familiar player at the counter and sarcastically asks if she's already maxed out her daily candy limit. Swallowing another sweet with zero manners, Isla mutters that if he keeps making bank like this, he'll easily fund his little secret rebellion. The guy quickly dodges the topic of his fake master plan and tries to extract the real reason the mage spawned in his shop again. Letting out a massive, frustrated sigh, his young fiancée makes it clear her run today is going absolutely terribly. She angrily vents that she got assigned to carry the new noobs through the famous combat tutorial of the semester. The blonde figures it out instantly, remembering that getting stuck with this quest is a mandatory tradition for the second place ranker. Super salty about the forced daily quest, she trashes the old rule, claiming she's going to patch this outdated event out of the game the second she hits rank 1. The truth is, this tutorial is actually a brutal PvP match designed to kill arrogant noobs and put them in their place. In the game, this is where the hero faces his first major boss fight at the academy. Even though he gets absolutely rolled in the arena, he ends the cutscene by managing to slice off a chunk of the mage's hair. Covered in debuffs and low on HP, the hero shows insane guts by managing to even land a hit on an elite-tier villain. Even with the guaranteed L, his crazy bravery wins over the crowd and permanently puts his name on the leaderboards. That single lucky crit is proof of the broken potential the kid has hiding inside him. Furious about taking even a tiny bit of damage, the fianché's ego shatters, causing her to get corrupted by the shadows. Snapping back to the present, the hero studies the terrifying sorceress sipping her ice juice, remembering he needs to CC her ego, so he doesn't get hunted down later. Curious, she asks about his prep for the festival, and he just says he'll be running his food stall. She fires back immediately about the shift timers, and tries to dig up what his plans are after he logs off from work. Deflecting hard, the merchant hides the truth and throws the aggro back on her, telling her to just focus on her upcoming PvP match. Mentally, the kid is having a full-blown panic attack, knowing that if the sorceress tilts and goes full villain, he'll get one shot in seconds. Running his brain at overclock speeds, he realizes his only survival strat is making sure she absolutely flawless victories the kid. To stall her rage meter, he brings up the cutscene, where she dared him to prove his real ambition. Putting on his best arrogant act, he questions if she even has the stats to comprehend his massive 200 IQ plays. Staring right into her soul, he straight up disrespects her magic tier right to her face. The girl instantly loses her cool, feeling massively disrespected by a washed-up shopkeeper doubting her skills. She lets her mana overflow, flexing her runner-up title to put the guy firmly back in his place. Completely immune to her flex, he ignores her badges and claps back that the Empire's history is full of runner-ups just like her. Pointing at his convenience store inventory, he highlights that his custom drops literally can't be farmed anywhere else on the server. Flexing his own grind, the blonde claims he's already proven he's way more of an SSR unit than her in a fraction of the time. The mage completely buffers, unable to find a solid counter-argument to such flawless merchant logic. Shifting the aggro to the real issue, he brings up the massive hype building around the genius commoner kid. Deeply offended by the insane comparison, she demands to know if he seriously thinks she'd ever struggle against some low-level farm boy. Going full shadow manipulator, the hero warns her that taking even 1 point of damage would permanently ruin the Tristar family's flawless win rate. Consumed by the rage of his trash talk, Isla cranks her dark aura to the max, turning the whole room into a terrifying boss room. With her ego bruised and the quest accepted, she swears to completely zero to death the freshman during the arena fight. Guaranteeing she'll one-shot the kid, she demands the blonde show up in person to watch her highlights. He swallows hard out of pure relief, knowing he just flawlessly manipulated her aggro to save his own run. Satisfied, the young hare turns her back and marches straight out the shop door. The wooden door slams shut, confirming the walking nightmare is finally gone, leaving the kid alone in the quiet mart. Mentally drained from the stress test, he stares blankly at the room, running the numbers on how badly this deal could backfire. Out of nowhere, he realizes he got totally scammed. She dipped without paying for the premium drink, she just chugged at the counter. To top off the bad RNG, he spots a fancy little note she conveniently forgot on the shop counter. Picking up the golden VIP pass, he questions why she'd drop him a ticket that's valid for 2 players. Ignoring the rich girl's broken logic, he switches gears back to the real boss fight, his bank account. Analyzing the insane scale of the freshman party, he knows the event zone is going to be swarming with hundreds of potential buyers. This is his ultimate, one-time chance to establish his brand and lock down a loyal player base across the entire campus. Checking his own inventory, he stresses over not having a legendary drop that can outshine every other merchant at the fair simultaneously. Even though his sweet drink went viral, farming the mats in the jungle has way too high of a death rate to scale for mass production. Determined to break the economy, he rolls up his sleeves to craft an elite, tier bread base packed with cream to totally patch the menu. Sweating buckets in his makeshift kitchen, the guy is fighting for his life, just trying to knead the heavy dough. The ex-noble's garbage physical stats react terribly to the continuous grind, draining his stamina bar just from squishing flour. Adding insult to injury, the constant rocking of the table gives him a weird, agonizing debuff straight to his stomach. Outside the shop, the bright lighting shows off the stunning graphics of the massive Magic Academy's gardens. Flopped on a plaza bench like a dropped item, the hero angrily wonders if he even has the HP to solo the festival demand. Furious at his character's absolute trash RNG genetics, he can't believe a simple 30-minute walk basically left him on 1 HP. Sighing over his cursed playthrough, he slowly turns his head when he hears a low noise spawning near the grass. The Merc Nefty is literally crawling across the courtyard having a total breakdown, crying that she can't go back to eating grass after tasting premium food. The blonde yells the broke girl's name, and she turns her dirt-covered face, trying to spot who pinged her. Crossing his arms, he takes in the pathetic scene and asks what on earth she's doing rolling around like a mob on the school lawn. The student blinks a million times, struggling to process that her snobby noble boss just caught her in 40K acting this pathetic. In a flash, pure panic overrides her system, and she leaps off the grass like a maniac to cover up the massive L she just took. Convinced she's hallucinating from a hunger debuff, the warrior waves her arm and curses the mirage, telling it to despawn immediately. Radiating pure chill, the blonde announces he's the real deal, freezing the girl in place from absolute cringe and horror. Leaning into the troll, he jokes that he's the canon villain of the story, here to drain every last drop of her stamina for a new side gig. Nefty spams apologies, while the shopkeeper casually asks what the meta strategy is for eating dirt on the main road. Sweating from anxiety, the swordswoman invents a fake excuse about doing deep breathing exercises in the garden. Cornered by the obvious cringe, she breaks down and confesses her head was spinning for food and she was literally crying from the debuff. Dying of embarrassment, she changes the subject and quietly asks how much it would cost to buy another one of those premium sandwiches from before. The villain is genuinely impressed by the sheer audacity of an employee begging for real food like that. Spotting the perfect exploit for profit, a wicked smirk spreads across his face as he cooks up a master plan to capitalize on it. Acting tough, he checks the girl's inventory, and she sadly admits she mailed all her gold back to her broke family. Digging the trap even deeper, he offers to pay her in food for her labor, but the heroine swears loyalty to the crown and rejects any illegal quests. Putting the worker's mind at ease, the boss reveals the quest is just grinding on the assembly line to sell food to the freshman players. Using his aggressive merchant voice, he drops the offer 10 grand an hour, overtime bonuses, plus a free daily premium lunch with 0 microtransactions. Completely broken by this insane chance to farm gold, Nefty drops into a humble bow, swearing to break her back for the shop's success. In the base code of this fictional universe, she's a mandatory party member for anyone playing the Knight class storyline. Known across the entire server as an iron-willed paladin, she holds the epic title Blade of Unbreakable Conviction because of her flawless moral compass. As the mentor to the red-haired rookie who eventually saves the server, she was so hyped that the whole fanbase spammed the forums to make her an official playable waifu. But looking at her goofy behavior begging for a snack, the blonde lifts her up by the collar, wondering where the invincible pride the devs promised went. With her eyes wide and completely hollowed out by her empty stamina bar, she immediately demands the official lunch break schedule. The hero shakes in his boots at her feral hunger, terrified he just permanently corrupted the storyline of a crucial, good aligned character. Back at his kitchen base of operations, he checks the duff and confirms it hit the perfect cooldown phase to rise. Using a metal cutter, the kid punches out the center of the ring, telling his starving helper to chill and that he's absolutely not trashing the leftovers. Casually explaining his modern cooking exploit, the chef reveals his master strat of combining all the discarded scraps to craft other menu items. Passing the heavy lifting over to his cheap new muscle, he issues the command, and she violently punches the rings on the counter in a blind frenzy that terrifies everyone near the stall. Speedrunning the task in record time, the girl pants heavily, waiting for the next phase of the physical grind. Stepping up again after being mind-blown by her super strength needing that would be unthinkable back on Earth, the MC gets back in the zone and lets her know the next step is dunking the shaped dove straight into the hot oil. As the donuts start turning golden in the fryer, he mentions this next-gen cooking tech is probably totally new to her. Suddenly, a weird noise makes the kid turn around in total shock. The warrior is staring at the pot, drooling like crazy, completely hypnotized by the god-tier smell coming from the fryer. The scent of the oil completely overtakes the kitchen, causing the girl's AI to break as she reaches her hand straight toward the boiling oil. Spotting the instant critical danger, the guy panics and yells that she's going to take massive fire damage if she touches it like that. Blinded by her empty hunger meter, Nefty swears her bravery fears no boiling oil, but gets immediately yelled at by the boss for wasting epic dialogue on a snack. With the fried rings cooling on the rack, the shop owner commands the knight to guard the area with her life, while he fetches the next crafting materials. Left alone in the room, the warrior silently cries, struggling to control the insane urge to devour the whole batch. Staring at the fully loaded tray, she curses the rules and calls the ex-tyrant the biggest monster on campus for putting her through this torture. Completely losing it from hunger, the student draws her sword ready to slice the sweet and end her suffering, but the leader spawns back in, warning her she'll lose her entire payout if she does. Terrified of losing her gold, she sheathes the blade in a panic and swears she never intended to cause any griefing on the job. Keeping his cool, the MC equips a piping bag and tells his anxious employee to just watch this next phase closely. With perfect mechanics, the kid demonstrates the exact way to use the tool to inject the fresh pastries with filling. Pumping the thick, sweet cream into the fluffy bread, he gets a loud gasp of pure amazement from his starving partner. Finally, the tray is stacked with golden desserts, flawlessly completing that massive crafting grind in the kitchen. Stunned by the item's graphics, the young knight praises the food's aesthetics like she's looking at a legendary drop. Curious about the custom craft, she asks what the item is called, and the owner casually drops that he named his invention a donut. The word sounds like absolute perfection to the student, who starts drooling again, admitting the name of the drop is just as epic. Getting emotional, the helper thanks him for letting her be part of this god-tier crafting session, hurting over the fact she can't even taste a single pixel of it. Trying to drop a subtle hint, she lightly brings up the daily meal they agreed on, but the leader immediately cuts her off before she can finish her sentence. Staring at the floor, the girl takes the L and tries to cope, claiming a luxury item like that would be way out of bounds for a low-level player like her. Throwing away her last shred of dignity, Nefty clasps her hands and begs desperately for just one tiny taste of the sweet drop. Giving in to her spam, the ex-leader assigns the girl the quest of testing the product, on the condition that she drops a super detailed review. To the absolute shock of the crying employee, the guy gives her the green light to sample one of every sweet sitting on the test counter. The news hits the knight like a server-wide buff, causing literal tears of pure joy and hype to stream down her face. Wasting a single frame, she inhales the pastry with monstrous hunger, shouting her thanks for the divine food with a mouth full of bread. Taking a breather, the merchant takes a bite of his own invention to check its actual stat values. The perfectly balanced flavor satisfies the hero's elite taste, proudly confirming the item is cracked and ready to break the market. Scanning for any bugs in the recipe, he quickly realizes the insane sugar levels could inflict a nausea debuff if someone spams too many bites. Watching his beta tester's reaction, the guy stares at the warrior intensely as she eats, making her super awkward from the sudden focus. Using a quick hand gesture, the owner signals her to pause her eating animation and listen up. The student freezes mid-bite, realizing the hardcore work phase and the mandatory review had officially started. Overwhelmed by her full stamina bar, the girl apologizes for misjudging the ex-tyrant, confidently declaring he's actually an OP guy who looks out for others. Drowning in her own gratitude, the warrior repeats that the server was totally wrong about his reputation, only to get instantly yelled at by the boss to shut her trap and focus on reviewing the candy. Surprised by the sudden aggro, the worker throws a salute with the snack still in her hand and promises to drop the full review the second she swallows. Equipped with a pen and paper in full professional mode, the MC demands exact stats on the baked variant of the dessert. Being totally real, the girl reports that the baked version had a lower sugar stat but was still insanely tasty, which the boss happily logs in his notes. Continuing the food interrogation, he asks about the sugar-glazed version, and the helper confirms that lacking the cream didn't nerf the dough's top-tier quality at all. Moving up to the high-level crafts, the kid focuses on the strawberry filling, listening to the knight hype up the strong god-tier fruit flavor. Ignoring the tester's massive fangirling, the merchant stays locked in and immediately asks for the final verdict on the main drop packed with fresh cream. Floating on cloud nine from the meal, the student flashes a massive smile and repeats that it was flawless just because of the creamy center. President drops his pen, completely tilted by how basic her answers are, cursing himself for expecting a high IQ food review from a player who used to main eating grass. Sensing the boss's massive tilt, Nefty panics and offers to go farm a high-level boss mob in the frozen mountains to make up for her trash vocabulary. Rejecting the warrior's suicidal side quest, the boss figures that if the food easily blew the mind of a broke commoner, it'll definitely be a massive hit among the whales at the festival. Triggered by his elitist logic, the helper argues back, asking why he's only targeting the whales when their stall is literally supposed to be a shop for the casual player base. The guy is caught off guard by the student's solid logic as she aggressively defends that the whole point of a convenience store is to be an easy and cheap vendor for everyone. Flipping the script with total confidence, the warrior challenges the boss to name a fair price for one of those sweets, leaving the merchant without a fast comeback. Using pure empathy stats, she points out the massive paywalls faced by low-level players grinding just to survive the academy, arguing they also deserve a chance to buy this top-tier happiness. Shaken by the girl's unbreakable morals, the MC folds to the guilt trip and throws the question back, asking what price she thinks is actually fair. The warrior's eyes get massive and sparkly, shocked by this ultra-rare display of flexibility from the famously toxic ex-council leader. Finding the girl's innocent expression hilarious, the guy drops his edgy act and tells her to just drop the number she was thinking of. Super embarrassed by her own guts, the helper praises the leader's good vibes again, but he cuts her off asking for just the price, listening as she shyly suggests that anything over 5,000 would be a total scam. The highly anticipated morning of Eve's festival finally drops, packing the Academy's main halls with a massive, chaotic crowd of players. The chaos from a safe distance, veterans troll the helpless noobs, placing sarcastic bets on who's going to quit first from the pressure. Right then, they spot the ex-president sitting solo on the upper benches and think the spawn is super glitched, since everyone assumed he got banned from the academy for his toxic behavior. Feeling the massive wave of negative aggro, the kid sweats nervously, realizing it was a garbage idea to load into an area packed with people who want him dead. He decides to speedrun out of the zone before some tilted student decides to initiate PvP over old drama. But his escape route gets blocked by Isla's unmistakable voice calling his name nearby. Flexing her usual arrogant aura, the mage brings up the food stall and asks if he only logged in today to watch her main event. The guy squints, totally missing the romantic subtext, and instantly shoots down any idea that he's simping for her. The girl goes completely mute, swallowing the brutal rejection that just shattered her hopes of getting the guy's attention. Trying to cover up the critical hit to her ego, she pushes the topic, pointing out that the ex-leader mentioned the event, desperately trying to get him to admit he's only there for her. Zero tolerance for the drama, the shopkeeper shatters the Fianchet's delusions again with another blunt, ice-cold no. Being brutally honest, he explains he's only there to scan the noob lobbies and data-mine potential buyers, announcing he's already heading out to grind. The hair gulps hard, awkward from the cold response, forced to swallow her rage over such a purely capitalist excuse. Walking away, the guy says peace out and tells the sorceress to swing by his pop-up shop in the casual zone if she wants to buy any actual useful items. Trying to salvage her dignity, the girl promises to only drop by if she's super bored, using the opening to once again demand he spectate her training match. Tilted by the guy's totally AFK vibe, the mage calls out his hypocrisy for demanding a flawless victory while acting like he won't even show up to watch the stream. Cornered by the furious girl demanding a solid excuse, the ex-leader sweats while overclocking his brain to talk his way out of this trap. Re-equipping his ultra-arrogant persona, he counters by saying he doesn't need to spectate because he's 100% sure his fiancée will absolutely steamroll the opponent with pure DPS. The big brain excuse packed with hidden compliments hits the girl during a vulnerable frame, instantly wiping her debuff of resentment. Nailing the mental gymnastics perfectly, the guy uses the exact keywords the witch loves, quietly ensuring her that her revolution will be flawless and totally stealthy. Complete muddled by having her ego stroked, the hair flashes a goofy smile and blushes, agreeing that he truly recognizes her broken damage output. Internally, the merchant lets out a massive sigh of relief, knowing that, by saving the girl's mental state, the match's result is already locked in. Tripping on her own hype after the compliments, the mage proudly dubs herself the Grand Wings of the Rebellion, while the blonde wonders who came up with such a cringe title. Suddenly changing the topic, the girl asks if he managed to pull the stats on her main opponent, joking that the new commoner looks more like an NPC sheep farmer. The hero shifts into high alert mode and tries to extract crucial lore, asking if she noticed any weird or glitched weapons on the guy. Scanning her memory files, the girl perfectly describes an ultra-weird blade with a bright red hilt that the commoner was casually carrying on his back. Stressed about the weapon leak, the former dictator asks if it was a massive, two-handed greatsword and gets an instant eyes from his fiancée. The chill vibe evaporates instantly as the guy locks eyes with the mage, dropping a hardcore warning for her to dodge the rookie's heavy attacks at all costs. The girl absorbs the tip in dead silence, realizing from her rival's serious stance that the threat level of this farm boy is way higher than she calculated. Miles away from the heavy tension of the PvP arena, the sunny morning lights up the always gorgeous and chill streets of the casual shopping district. Walking at a slow pace down the road, the shop owner cold sweats trying to process the massive lore bomb he just uncovered about the freshman. According to the unbreakable rules of the original canon, that broken weapon isn't supposed to spawn in the MC's inventory until way after Part 2 ends. Leaning on the crucial tip he just dropped, the blonde tries to calm his nerves, praying his fiancée doesn't get wiped out by this massive glitch in the storyline. Reaching the spawn point for his stall, the kid gets snapped out of his dark thoughts by the insane amount of players already flooding the zone. Overflowing with energy in a scuffed gym uniform, Nefty throws a massive salute with a huge grin, reporting that the entire shop setup is 100% good to go. The weird dynamic draws the aggro of the crowd around them, who start whispering in horror seeing the respected warrior doing grunt work for the most toxic student in server history. Totally ignoring the panicked chatter from the casuals, the knight keeps her back straight, fully locked into her new paid gig. Seeing the genuine, pure hype of his new employee, the boss can't help but crack a small smile that mixes pure satisfaction and relief. Switching to a purely sarcastic tone, the old leader puts his hand over his face and jokes that the honorable warrior is only there on a quest to save his corrupted soul. The student is totally lost on his dramatic roleplay, so the boss quickly adds that he'll play along and respect the insane hard energy she's bringing to the shift. Finally getting the classic snubby noble sarcasm, the girl sighs in relief, whispering to herself that the leader's edgy attitude was exactly what she expected. Dropping the ego, she shows super genuine appreciation for the job, making the grumpy guy look away, slightly embarrassed. Locking back into the grind, the owner immediately checks if the oil temp in the iron pot is perfect to activate his cooking strat. Taking charge of the kitchen, the kid orders the instant start of the production line using the method they beta tested, making his helper freeze in terror at the command. Paralyzed by the fear of this suicidal business move, the warrior warns that the strat is ultra dangerous and will completely destroy the other vendors. But she ditches her morals in a split second when she hears the promise of a fat bonus for hitting targets. To guarantee his business partner's absolute, feral loyalty, the boss flat out states that a massive 30% of the final profits goes straight to her inventory. That hypothetical gold drop hits the broke student like a literal tornado, making her dive to the dirt floor with terrifying speed. On her knees, striking a pose worthy of an epic paladin, the girl pledges absolute devotion to the boss, instantly swapping her high morals for the chance to delete her poverty debuff. Flashing the evil smirk of someone who has complete server dominance, the ex-leader calmly asks if his new sales bot is ready for the trade war. Fully corrupted by the greed, Nefty raises the metal tongues with a dark aura, swearing to mercilessly wipe out any rival vendor who dares to grief their hustle. While the dark duo preps the battleground for the friar, the morning sun beats down on the massive, packed courtyard hosting the elite merchant stalls. One of the exhausted event mods drags himself down the street looking like a literal zombie, crying over his zero stamina and praying for a random buff to cure his pain. Suddenly, a super unique and cozy smell catches the breeze, forcing the guy with glasses to stop dead in his tracks to scan for the source. Lured in by the food alchemy, he unconsciously turns his head and spots an inviting cloud of smoke rising from an isolated tent. Walking slow like a mind-controlled mob, the guy tries to see past the glowing light while his hunger meter flashes aggressively. The shock of the sweet, amazing smell hits the guy like a critical strike, triggering a full emotional breakdown as he feels the food instantly wiping his exhaustion debuff. Totally mesmerized by the live cooking stream, he adjusts his glasses while shaking with anxiety, desperate to inhale the mystery dish they're crafting. Breathing in all that magic alongside a bunch of other curious players, the guy eagerly sucks up the comforting scent that just took over the campus. Overwhelmed by the massive urge to eat, the customer urgently demands the name of this god, Teardrop, only to be met with the shopkeeper's polite but totally evil smile. Proudly pointing at the golden spheres floating in the boiling oil, the kid shows off his masterpiece, naming the brand, new tech for this primitive server manju. Absolute chaos breaks out at the stall, with a massive horde of students screaming for boxes of the next gen sweet in pure desperation. Getting pushed to the limit by the insane spam of orders, the ex-leader screams at the top of his lungs, begging his assistant to up her APM and stop a total server crash. Channeling her hardcore combat stats, the knight dashes like lightning, catching the scalding hot sweets mid-air with terrifying precision. Moving at a frame rate the customers can't even process, she rapid fires the sugar-coated snacks in the trays, maintaining an impossibly broken service speed. The whole street is shook watching the absolute madness of frying dough with a hole in it, realizing the recipe is a highly profitable exploit. An endless wave of players form a mosh pit waving their gold in the air, screaming for bigger and bigger drops before the items sell out. Away from the stall's hype, a pair of poorly jeered noobs watch the scene looking super depressed, gripping their empty coin pouches with maximum saltiness. Spotting the hungry, embarrassed looks hiding in the back, the owner instantly realizes the festival's fixed prices are a brutal paywall for the broke kids. Maxing out his charitable merchant persona, the kid smiles with calculated kindness and loudly announces a crazy 50% discount exclusively for the rookie class. The price drop hits the broke students like a literal blessing, restoring the missing happiness to the exhausted teens' faces. The genius marketing strat gets instant results, pulling in a brand new, hyped-up wave of freshmen demanding their snacks at the counter. Mentally savoring the evil success of his plan, the blonde laughs at how naive the kids are, knowing full well his base profit margin easily covered the discount anyway. After grinding for hours in the kitchen trenches, the sun signals the late afternoon, meaning it's finally time to log off from the stall's brutal pace. Collapsed on the floor, absolutely zeroed out from his trash noble body's stamina limit, the boss closes his eyes and listens to his starving partner praise his MVP carry. Cheek stuffed with all the filling she looted from the shelves, the knight celebrates the final items, selling out, while the boss groans for her to stop eating their profit margin. Far away from merchant madness, the school's massive arena is absolutely booming with the hyped screams of the crowd waiting for the main event. Casually chewing on another sweet, the knight points out the tutorial vibe feels way too intense, and the boss figures the PvP match has finally started. The old leader's anxiety spikes thinking about how sideways this could go, fully aware of the massive stakes about to drop in that zone. Up in the packed stands, the crowd goes wild simping for the Witch of the Black Crystal, hyping the girl up as the undisputed runner up of the server. Walking with max confidence and a steady pace, the mage heads to the center of the map while soaking up the cheers from her fan base. Taking in all the massive hype, Isla Tristar stops dead center in the arena with her chin up, flexing her classic top-tier boss pose. But she quickly drops a bored expression, thinking this whole crowd going crazy over a simple tutorial is a massive waste of her time. Locked into her combat stance, the hare stares down the silhouette of her mystery opponent, who just loaded into the arena. Resting his hand on that weird sword with the red gem, the challenger bows formally and says he's super pumped for the chance to duel. Bursting with energy and flashing a fearless smile, the rookie Keltis draws his weapon and finally reveals his gamertag to the ruthless veteran. Up on the VIP balcony, Eve drops a hardcore speech promising that her student council will make sure the matchmaking is fair for everyone. Flexing her leadership aura, the president tells the freshmen to grind hard and make the most of this new expansion at the school. Down in the crowd, the mage listens as the president notes that only the newbies don't know about the toxic era caused by Wolfram. Checking her own approval ratings, the leader figures that roasting the ex-president on main would massively boost her rep with the veteran players. However, Isla admits it actually makes sense that her rival skipped dragging the ex-leader through the mud this time around. The sorceress deletes those thoughts and locks back into the only quest that matters right now. Already spawned in the arena, the noob Keltis scratches his head, showing he thinks all this unskippable cutscene dialogue is super boring. The announcer calls the match between the server runner, Up, and the complete noob, a matchup the mage takes as a massive disrespect to her family's clan. Glaring at the kid from across the map, the mage gets insanely tilted seeing the pure, innocent hype shining in his eyes. Standing her ground, the witch officially introduces herself and announces she expects a high-level run from this duel. Hyped for the upcoming boss fight, the hero grips his sword and finally drops his name to the ruthless veteran. Right then, the girl gets a flashback to the brutal trash talk she took from the former president a little while ago. In her memory log, the shop owner roasted her for being hard stuck, claiming she had zero actual talent despite her ambitious vibe. The ex-leader had basically taunted her, claiming he wanted to stand next to her on the podium, where she'd be the absolute center of attention. Channeling the exact same toxic energy her fiancé used, the witch glares at the freshman and asks if he even has the stats to secure a deluge. Flexing her max-level ego, the hare announces she's going to check him right here and now. She spawns a bunch of magic-infused crystals that orbit her body, lighting up the entire PvP zone. The noob gulps, feeling the suffocating weight of the dark aura leaking from his opponent. Standing near them, the council elf explains the win conditions are simple: either zero the enemy's HP or knock them out of bounds. Annoyed by the standard rulebook, the mage raises a finger and pitches a custom game mode for the duel. Totally confident in her DPS, she promises to cast her ultimate ability just once and guarantees the kid the win if he manages to tank the hit. The rookie understands how insane the challenge is and accepts the veteran's custom rules without hesitating. Keeping her boss aura maxed out, the witch gives him the advantage and tells the kid to make the first move. Taking the opening, Keltis grips his sword tight and preps his engage. Overflowing with bravery, he yells that he's going to rush her using his max AP. In a fraction of a second, the noob dashes across the arena with terrifying movement speed. The sorceress's eyes track the high-speed engage with extreme focus. In her head, she admits the kid's mobility stats are actually broken for someone who just finished the tutorial. The hero holds his charge perfectly, showing zero fear against the opponent's magic scaling. Dodging his aggro, the hare guesses his skill tree is already on par with a second-year player. Unfazed by the speed blitz, the mage simply snaps her fingers to cast her defense buff. A massive wall of dark stone spawns from the floor, completely blocking the challenger's path. The freshman's sword slams hard against the magic barrier, but his attack damage isn't enough to break the shield. Chilling in her spot, the veteran taunts him, asking if he's going to try jumping it or finding a flank route. The boy just grinds his blade into the stone, refusing to cancel his dash animation, even a single pixel. Out of nowhere, the gem socketed in the base of his sword starts glowing with a blinding red light. Pushed to the limit, the hero screams and dumps his entire hidden mana pool all at once. Delivering a massive critical strike, he shatters the unbreakable shield, flexing his completely broken damage scaling. Up in the stands, the crowd absolutely loses it watching a random noob delete the runner, ups defenses. Even the council leader's eyes go wide, totally shook by the kid's impossible play. Staring at her dusted shield, the hare suddenly remembers the serious tip the ex-leader gave her about this kid's broken attack stats. Glad she actually read the patch notes he gave her, she flashes an evil grin and mentally thanks him for the god-tier advice. Riding the hype of breaking the shield, Keltis keeps pushing his aggressive rush straight at the rival. Taking the threat seriously now, the witch optimizes her mana usage and spawns a massive cluster of sharp crystals in mid-air. A literal bullet hell of crystal projectiles gets fired at the hero at max velocity. The students in the stands go absolutely feral over the intense PvP, screaming non-stop with every explosive hit. Parrying the magic spam while losing HP, the noob fights to maintain his combo rhythm. The mage watches the kid struggle and admits he definitely has some OP tricks hidden in his loadout. Slightly moved by the rookie's unbreakable grind set, the veteran admits she actually respects the fire in his eyes a little bit. But the wholesome moment gets deleted fast as the witch starts charging a ridiculous amount of dark energy above her head. Tier crystal spawns in the sky, signaling the start of the girl's lethal ultimate attack. With a ruthless voice, she declares he'll never have the stats required to be the true wings of a revolution. The massive energy construct drops from the sky straight at the hero, packing an incalculable amount of burst damage. Completely stunned, locked with no dodge roll available, the kid screams in terror, trying to parry the nuke with just his blade. A massive explosion wipes the combat zone, kicking up a thick cloud of dirt and smoke everywhere. Horrified by the sheer level of destruction, the elf ref stutters as she calls the match over. As the dust settles in the crater, Isla is standing there at full HP without a scratch, getting declared the undisputed champion. Flexing her ego after such a flawless W, her only remaining side quest is hoping her fiancé's food stall is still online. Far away from the arena, the ex-president's tent is in absolute chaos, with dozens of players screaming for food at the same time. Dead tired from the impossible server load, the owner tells his warrior that hiring her was the best RNG of his entire run. Sweating at the counter, the kid announces he needs to gear up for the real boss fight, completely confusing his helper with the dialogue. Handing out snacks to the crowd, the boss ignores his employees' questions and locks 100% into his survival strat. In his head, the hero knows the arena win secured his mind, control over the mage, but he knows he needs to drop a high-tier gift to keep her aggro low. Suddenly, Isla's freezing tone spawns right behind him, asking exactly who he's planning on simping for. The jump scare is massive, making both vendors leap out of their skin before the ex-tyrant tries to change the subject by asking how the noob exams went. Sweating buckets in front of his fiancée, the ex-leader desperately tries to read her smirking animation, while apologizing that the shop is out of stock. To dodge a game over, he instantly hands her a brown paper bag and tells her it's really not a big deal. The hare checks her inventory and sees a bunch of fresh manjus in the bag, listening to her rival swear that he saved this specific batch just for her. Trusting his max-level manipulation, the kid assumes the tutorial match was super boring and offers the sweets as a small buff. The mage lets out a quiet laugh, clearly thrilled with how he welcomed her and flawlessly read the room. Happy with his high IQ play, the sorceress praises the merchant's radar and confirms the fight was a total snoozefest. A massive wave of relief floods the young MC's soul, thanking the devs he dodged the bad ending where the girl turns into a villain. Gripping the bag tight, the witch gladly accepts the loot and agrees to use the snacks to fix her boring day. Already turned around and ready to log off, the mage hits the kid with a surprise attack, announcing she'll visit his actual grocery store later. The former dictator totally freezes on the spot, dripping with anxiety, unable to process why she's so obsessed with visiting his spawn point. Staring at the girl's back, the kid notices the intense, dark aura radiating from her. Holding her snack, the mage gives off a vibe that's beautiful but totally terrifying as she walks away from the zone. Completely drained and sweating cold, the owner lets out a long sigh, hyped that he survived that encounter without getting deleted. The chill phase ends fast because his employee starts raging about the queue size, threatening to pull her sword if he doesn't start cooking. Dodging her aggro, the guy tries to calm the warrior down and gets back to grinding, making sure the welcome party ends with absolute top-tier sales numbers. The next day, the massive magic school's sunny courtyards go back to their usual chill vibe. Casually strolling around in his formal academy skin, the former president ends up drawing the aggro of every student in the area. A squad of senior girls gossips, weirded out that he didn't retreat to his imperial base, thinking it's insane he actually showed up for standard classes. Watching the blonde kid from afar, the rest of the players try to guess what's going through the fallen dictator's head. Totally ignoring the server drama, the guy is purely focused on an epic amount of gold. Honoring the exact contract they signed, he hands over a massive bag packed with coins to his assistant. Nefty can barely believe the weight of the loot, totally starstruck by such an insanely fat payout. Playing his boss role, the kid explains that the bag holds exactly the 30% cut they agreed on, smashing way past the 800,000 coin mark. The girl shakes with anxiety and tries to reject the bonus gold, quoting her paladin code to argue that it was just a one-off quest. But her greed stats overpower her honor, and she hugs the bag tight, declaring she's keeping the loot like a true warrior should. Bursting with energy and a maxed-out bank account, the knight says bye and speed, walks away to go spend her rewards. The guy just watches his hyped-up worker despawn, sinking into a deep silence right in the middle of the lobby. Feeling good about the ROI, he thinks he almost slipped up and tipped her, admitting the festival grind was actually a pretty fun minigame. However, the kid's low HP stats hand him the bill, causing him to crash from pure exhaustion while cursing the limits of his trash avatar. Walking toward the Academy's VIP cafeteria, he accidentally bumps straight into Isla in the middle of the hall. Leaking a terrifying aura, the sorceress demands the ex-president party up with her for lunch in the cafeteria right now. Super uncomfortable with her forced invite, the guy mentally complains about how she always locks in decisions without asking anyone. Terrified of getting hit by the girl's magic aggro, he just nods and follows, listening to her say today's menu, you pick, is going to be something rebellious. Once they take their seats, a super helpful NPC waitress lists off all the premium options on the cafeteria's high-end menu. The vibe in the room is dead quiet, packed with nobles enjoying the server's top-tier food. Noticing the guy is AFK on his choice, both the mage and the waitress ask if he hasn't locked in his order yet. Sick of the basic menu options, the former leader forcefully slams the closed menu onto the wooden table. Looking dead at the server, he demands they craft the absolute speciest dish they have, leaving everyone shook by his weird request. Flexing his boss aura, the MC points at the menu and repeats his order aggressively just to make sure they get it right. Knowing her rival's elite taste, the mage cold sweats, wondering what kind of insane strat he's cooking up. Hidden underneath all that noble drip, the guy is basically just a tired Korean worker who desperately wants some hardcore spicy food to clear his debuffs. A few minutes later, a steaming bowl filled with a violently red broth drops right in front of him. The chef laughs, respecting the kid's guts, warning him that the dish is high risk and would make any noob cry. But the cook's smugness vanishes the second he recognizes the toxic ex-president, who just calmly says thanks for the drop. Staring at the cursed soup, the hare looks disgusted and doubts her fiancé actually has the stats to tank that meal. Super confident in his poison resistance, he claims he'll clear the bowl easily, guessing the bright red color means the spices are OP. Hyped up, the guy dips his spoon into the red puddle, getting ready for his first hit of the promised hardcore flavor. Without any hesitation, he brings the hot liquid to his mouth, waiting for the massive wave of aggressive spices to hit. A look of massive disappointment washes over the guy's face, making the sorceress panic, thinking his HP just hit 0. Slamming his hand on the wood in pure saltiness, the kid waves off any healing items and swears his health bar is completely fine. Furious about the menu's false advertising, he complains loudly that the food literally has 0 spice in it. Inspecting the soup's code, the shopkeeper realizes the red color is literally just tomato juice, calling the lack of seasoning an absolute joke. Confused by her rival's chill reaction, the witch stares at the bowl and asks if the flavor is really that heavily nerfed. Catching the hint, he dares the girl to taste it, which she only accepts to keep her hardcore, rebel aesthetic from breaking. Looking a bit nervous, the mage leans in and sips the hot broth straight off the guy's spoon. Immediately, the girl's eyes bulge out like crazy as she feels the demonic fire damage melting her throat. Panic completely hacks the girl's brain and she starts screaming with a bright red face, taking massive burn damage from the food. Coughing uncontrollably, the hare collapses on the table, fighting for her life, trying to catch her breath during the spicy torture. Reacting with insane reflexes, the guy jams a straw into the girl's mouth, forcing her to chug a cold drink to save her run. The sweet cooldown buff hits instantly, saving the crying sorceress from her spicy nightmare. Getting her stamina back, Isla asks how it's even possible for a human to tank that much fire damage in their mouth. Overflowing with ego, the blonde promises that soup was completely flavorless and swears his custom spice mix would be infinitely more lethal. Suddenly, a super edgy voice spawns right behind them, confirming that the meal actually was totally bland. Holding a spoon in the shadows, a short girl with white hair completely agrees with the merchant's hot take. All the blood drains from the former leader's face, throwing him into pure terror as he recognizes the horrifying presence of the new arrival. That girl was none other than Ludica Hassan Shadow, a hidden boss from the third year studying advanced magic. In the base code of the game's lore, the MC could trigger cursed story routes just by picking toxic dialogue options. Like if the player made evil choices, such as leaving party members to die just to save their own skin in raids. Or ignored critical main quests, letting NPCs suffer permanent debuffs along the way. By getting hooked on griefing, the game's hero had the option to go full villain just for the trolls. As an anti-cheat for these toxic runs, the tiny student would spawn from the shadows to deliver the ultimate banhammer on all that evil. Moving with broken speed stats, the executioner would brutally one-shot the hero and instantly roll the credits on that cursed playthrough. Famous in the community as the Reaper, she was the guaranteed game over screen for any player who crossed into the evil alignment. Sweating pure fear at the cafeteria table, the ex-dictator struggles to process why this literal ghost decided to spawn in his lobby right now. Complete ignoring the kid's panic attack, the girl uses an ice-cold voice to demand he cook up that ultra-spicy recipe was just bragging about. Hours later, the quiet night shift takes over the empty streets around the kid's little shop. Sprawled on the couch in the dark, the shopkeeper processes the event and figures the odds of her actually assassinating him are basically zero. Since he knows the game's code, he realizes he'd already be back at the lobby screen the second she spawned if her quest was actually to kill him. Even with that meta-knowledge, the kid decides not to test his RNG and signs a contract with Nefty to act as his exclusive shop bouncer. The warrior thinks it's super weird to patrol such a dead zone, but goes crazy with hype over the fat payout they agreed on. Suddenly, a heavy, crushing aura floods the room, making the former leader's heart rate spike in pure panic. The night student instantly senses the aggro too, spinning around terrified as she spots the brutal spawn of the executioner. A violent crash rips through the mart's ceiling, bringing the white-haired assassin crashing down onto the shop floor in a destructive dive attack. A massive dust cloud kicks up from the heavy impact, completely deleting the chill vibe of their closing shift. Locked onto her target, the edgy Ludica stands up from the rubble, inflicting a fear debuff that paralyzes the other two kids in the room. Frozen in his seat, the blonde sweats as he hears the attacker's creepy voice aggressively demanding the spicy soup he promised to craft. Radiating pure boss energy in the middle of the wrecked shop, the terrifying Reaper holds her edgy stance and demands to know if her food drop is finally ready.